Hey, everybody, it's Michelle tuning in to give you a heads up on what today's conversation is all about. It's about content and conversations. We need to put content out there to show our expertise, develop our thought leadership, really put our personal brand out there. But guess what? It's not easy. And I know I suffer from this as well because for me, it's so easy to have conversations with people in real life. But you put me on LinkedIn and on social media, I have this layer around me. What if there was a way that you reframed everything you thought about putting content out there? Well, today's guest is all about that. I'm thrilled to have on the show Heidi Medina to really help us turn our content into conversations. Heidi is a Gen X social media marketing strategist and business coach with more than 25 years experience building for businesses. She works with online business owners and coaches to turn LinkedIn connections into paying clients and collaborations using content and conversations and having more fun. And that makes me so relieved. And you too, I bet, right? Putting content out there, writing, and all this shouldn't be a chore. She tells us exactly how to use our online voice and gives us some really good theory and strategy and takeaways. I first found Heidi when she joined my community. And this past summer, I took one of her workshops and learned so much. We talk about social selling, LinkedIn, what's changed in the last year, and how to really pivot the way you're putting yourself out there with content. I know you'll love our quick actionable episode, but let me know. I love when I hear from my listeners and friends and connections all about what you thought of this episode. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let me know in the comments. I absolutely love hearing your feedback. So I know you'll love today's topic, and let's get into it. Hey there, it's the brand therapist Michelle B. Griffin, and welcome to your weekly personal brand therapy session. As a certified personal brand and PR strategist, speaker, and author, I'm here to empower you to put yourself out there so you can find clarity, build visibility, and grow your industry authority. I'm super excited you're here. Now let's get going with today's session. Welcome everybody to this week's episode of Ask the Brand Therapist. I'm the brand therapist, Michelle B. Griffin. And I'm thrilled to have my guest today who's going to help us tackle the problem of content, putting ourselves out there with content. It doesn't have to be a waste of time, energy, and it should be getting you results. So with that being said, welcome to the show, Heidi Medina.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Michelle.
It's so good to be here. I know you're all the way in Portugal, so we appreciate you taking time off. For those who haven't met you yet, tell us exactly what you do, who you do it for, and how you do it.
I am a social media marketing strategist that specializes in social selling on LinkedIn. And I'm not talking about that full DM sending stuff, but it's actually conversations and content. And it's all about creating a marketing strategy to build relationships that can go beyond just paying clients. It can be collaborations, speaking gigs. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy what I do.
And it is so needed out there, especially for people building their personal brands, which many of our listeners, of course, are. So just a little bit of backstory. I think we first met because you're in my community. Back this summer, I signed up for one of your content workshops and was just blown away. And then when the topic of content came up, I'm like, oh, I need to get Heidi. But then what really sealed the deal, and I want you to really tell us about it because this is going to be so relatable to so many people. And you guys can check it out too. If you go to her about section on her LinkedIn profile, she starts right away with back in 2018. She tells a story that really transformed her business and herself on the way she puts content out there. So tell us that story and how it led to that aha moment and then leading up to now what we're going to talk about today.
It was the first time I had a rant on LinkedIn. So I had been on the platform posting for a few months to almost forget. And one day, and I honestly don't remember exactly what the topic was, but I was in a rant over it. And I just got on LinkedIn in 2 or 3 minutes. I had the post out, posted it, dropped the F-bomb 3 times, closed my computer lid, and walked away. 10 minutes later, I was like, oh my God, I just did something not professional on LinkedIn. I'm going to be banned. I got to get back on. I got to hope I can get this deleted. Everything's okay. And I opened my computer up, logged on. I had over 30 comments, and not one person said anything about the F-bombs. Instead, they were relating to me. They were talking to me. It was an actual conversation. And that was the day I realized that stuffy, boring corporate professional isn't what LinkedIn's about. And it's about real conversation. I'm not recommending everybody go drop the F-bomb or anything or rant to everybody, but it was just so raw and real that people related. And since then, that's how I work all my content, because it made me realize content is a conversation.
And it got you from, I think you even said in that story, you weren't having any luck with your content. It was too buttoned up. It wasn't getting you any leads or clients, but then that day was actually a blessing in disguise. Yes, don't go drop 4 F-bombs and all that, right? But there's a way, and we're going to learn today how to be relatable, make content a conversation. And LinkedIn's tagline is something like LinkedIn, where business conversations happen. But today, we don't want to talk about being like buttoned up businessy, nor do we want to talk about, hey, look at me, sexy selfie stuff either. There's a middle ground. That's what I call the word professional. But I want to dig into you learn in that moment how to do it. You teach people how to do it. You teach business owners, coaches, consultants with a lot of success, and yours too. So where do we start from here? How do we go from buttoned up to I have to be this way to using content as your online voice?
You start by letting go what your ideal professional about LinkedIn is. I mean, that everybody's got in their head, and I still see literally just yesterday about Facebook. I was talking to people about LinkedIn, and she was like, I don't do LinkedIn. And I said, why? And she says, it's corporate stuffy, professional, too businessy, to everything. And I said, you haven't been on there in a while. And she's like, yeah, but I'm connected in my old life to corporate people. And I'm like, oh, there's the problem. Follow me and join me and we'll talk about it. But the thing is, people having this idea of their head that professional is suit, tie, briefcase, got to be all serious. But they forget when you go to work, I don't care what kind of job you're in. If you're around the water cooler or you're talking to your people, you're having real conversation. You're not all, oh my God, we got to get this brief in every 5 minutes. You're not like that. So you show up on LinkedIn as you do with your clients. That's professional for you. And when I realized that, and I also started realizing that content is your online voice, it's how you have the conversations with the people on the other side of the screen. And that realization and the disconnect that people have, that it is people on the other side of the screen. When you let go of all of that and you realize this is your voice, this is your conversation, this is how you're speaking to people, it changes everything. And when you start thinking of content as conversation, it's your conversation starter. You know what you want to talk about. You know what you want to get people talking about to you.
But how do we do it? It sounds so easy to say, but I'm thinking, what if I'm like using as a fictitious person? What if I'm like buttoned up Bobby and Bonnie and I don't know how to do it? I want to be that person. You broke through. You had that aha moment. How do you tell your client or show your clients how to do it? Because we know LinkedIn is not that buttoned up place anymore. People want it. Also, too, the algorithm changed a couple months ago. So they are supporting that expertise. So how do we blend sharing our expertise, but sharing our personable side, as I always say? What's the first step? I'm a student here too. I'm trying to peel back more layers every day.
I think the first thing to do is, I actually tell my clients, one of the biggest ways to get through it is to pick your favorite client and write your content to them. Speak to them in the content. How would you, if they were sitting across from you on the other side, say it's virtual, it's on the other side of the Zoom screen, you're staring in their face. How are you actually going to talk to them? And then that's how you write your content. You write it exactly how you would say it if they were sitting there. And some of my clients, and this is a trick I do with part of them too, is I'm like, use talk to text. Mm-hmm. We all have the option. If you need to, get your phone out. If you want to do it in your notes or do it in a Google Doc, whatever, they all have it. Click the microphone and actually speak the piece instead of trying to even write it. And that's a great way to help you learn to write like you talk. because then it converts and you start seeing it. You start seeing your actual speech and text.
I love that. I was going to say the same thing. I recommend that to my clients, but I use otter.ai, the free version. And you also can get the recording and then it transcribes it, and you learn the Michelleisms or the Heidiisms, the things you say. And people, those are little drops of your brand that just start making that top of mind thing, how you say things. And the funny thing is, you're in my community. I do one of those community posts in like a minute. It's just me talking to you all, friends over Zoom or coffee. But the weird thing is when I try to do posts, I freeze up. And I think that's a lot of us. And I know this isn't really like a LinkedIn 101 or content, because this applies to Instagram, social media, any platform. We're a little more intimidated. So we have to know, forget being the button up self. We have to recognize people want us, talk to one person. Another thing is talk to text. And then what? Like, you got to have a strategy too. This is all good, but I feel like you got to know who you're talking to, what they need, and how you solve it. So how do you string that next?
You actually start with that. Those are the answers ahead of time. Like I start everybody with I call those the foundational pieces. Is one, your first thing you got to know is what you're working to achieve. And that's the thing people forget. They're like, okay, I need to write my content to my ideal client, but what is the purpose behind that piece of content? What are you actually trying to achieve? See, you do need to know and understand why you're creating the content to begin with, because that way you're going to achieve your purpose. Because we could throw out content all day long. People are used to free stuff all over the internet. So you could throw out teaching pieces all day long, but are you going to achieve the actual result of converting that into clients, building your personal brand, getting your dream job? No, it starts with understanding, why do I want to create content to begin with? And then you start from that point. Yes, you got to know your ideal client intimately so you can speak to them. And then it's also about, I like stories. It's about connecting to people. Yes, it is with strategy. Yes, you are going to have a call to action on it that results in what you're wanting. But I also, and I think I have it laying here, I also want every single piece of content I do to create some kind of emotion or feeling in people. And these are mine. And I keep them right beside my computer here so that I know it's hope, security, safety, confidence, knowledge, control, freedom, permission, fun, and empowered. My content, I want it to create at least one of those feelings, people, and the emotions.
Because we connect emotionally before we do logically. Yeah. And so social selling is another undercurrent of what you're doing here, but it doesn't have to be salesy. And if you want people to take an action, you want that those goals and have a strategy around it. It doesn't mean, yes, you have to show up and say, buy my this, buy my that. No. You're telling stories that evoke emotion, a feeling. And it's sometimes, yes, you've got to lead people to that action. So how do you be subtle about it? Because I feel like some people just freak out when you say the word take an action or something, because I don't want to we shouldn't be wasting our time and anyone else's. Content is a commodity now, right?
Yes.
And another thing I want to ask you about, and maybe it should be part 2, but to add to that, back in 2021, when I went all out on LinkedIn every single day, I was doing a lot more how-to content. Then the platform got so flooded, and now I really feel like how I do this content, why I do this content, here's how we can help you content is really resonating better. And so tell me your thoughts about all that loaded question I just gave you.
No, but you're right. You're right. Everything changed in 2023. Literally. Like earlier this year, I really had to pivot my entire social selling strategy because everything that worked in 2022 was not working this year. And it is that instead of saying, you do this, when I switched the post, this is how I do it. That one subtle shift this year is making so much more of a difference with how it resonates with people. It makes sense when you think about the psychological of it. Instead, you got the teacher, you do this. Instead, you're like, wow, this is what I'm doing. This is what works. So you're guiding now instead of just telling people what to do. And it's a different shift in empowerment for people. It's also telling them what you're doing, what's working, and then they have a choice whether to take it in and use it versus, oh my God, this is it. Because everybody's confused. There's so many different ways to market. And of course, everybody's got their different way. I'm sharing a different way. You share a different way. Everybody we know shares a different way. So it's about presenting it so you find your people that resonate with the way you're sharing.
Absolutely. More micro niche too. I think we need to be more micro niche than ever. And I think Chat GPT coming out into last year really just commodified everything. We were faced with the onslaught of Chat GPT tips and that. Like, I just want to scream when I see any kind of hacks or any of that. Like, I just want to know the real meat and potatoes that the right people I'm attracted to resonate, that I can learn. And you can learn from everyone, really. We all have something to share, our unique stories and perspectives on things that's going to resonate and make sense to someone more than the other. So essentially, you're telling us that we should go from being the guru to the guide, the gentle guide. Hey, this is a journey. If you're on it, let me show you what happened to me, or this works for me, and you figure it out yourself. So it's a lot more gentle approach. And I think we really need more humanization and personalization. And I think that's what that connection, that emotional feeling comes through too.
Yeah, and you're completely right. I was actually just talking with Neil Simpson earlier this week. I was talking about how I feel like I'm guiding people now, and he even used the word explorer. And I was like, wow, that's really cool too, because let's be honest, social media and tech's moving so fast. Nobody's an expert. It's changing too quickly. You're just steps ahead of other people. That's all you are. And so this idea of that tone of voice, I just truly believe it comes back to it empowers people, because now you're guiding them. You're not trying to say this is the only way. And one of the big messages I am always telling everyone is there literally is 1,000,001 ways to market. They all work, but it's just about finding the ones that work for you.
And the ones that you can stay consistent and committed. We all fall victim to shiny objects, myself included.
Yeah.
But I realize now, hey, is that my natural strength? Am I just doing that because everyone does it? And here's a tip, not anything personal to anyone, but if you are distracted by other people's content that's just not aligned with you, I just unfollow people. I keep my clear lane with my blinders on, because truly, shout out to Bruce Waller, who is one of my connections. Months ago, I read this quote he put in a post, and I actually put it in my signature talk. When you're in your own lane, there is no traffic. You don't have to look to other people for the answers and how to do it. Maybe look for some people and see how they're doing it, but then stay in your lane, do what works, because you'll just stop and be stagnant. You've got to lean into what works for you. So I love that you brought that up. So much goodness here about setting the tone, resetting the expectations, recognizing that platforms, algorithms change, people change, the world's changing with ChatGPT. But we still want to get out there. We still need to get out there and share our voice and our expertise. How do we do it now? Emotionally connected, but how do we take the action and turn content into conversations and then clients? Because that worked for you, and you've been doing that the last 5 years, ever since that aha moment.
Seriously, it's the mindset shift. And for all of my clients, that's even the aha moment too, is when they realize that it's truly their online voice, that it is a conversation. And I know that sounds simple, but it is a massive mindset shift, because you tend to think that you're typing on a keyboard. People forget. I literally had a coffee chat with a girl the other day, and she's asked how she could support me. And I said, hey, you've been lurking my content, but you don't comment. Join the conversation. And she went, what conversation? And that's the mentality. That's what your comments are. And that's what content is. And so that shifts that mindset of, I am talking to a human being on the other side of the screen. I'm talking to somebody who can be my client, could be a collaborating peer, a friend. And one of my best friends I met through LinkedIn lives in Virginia.
Michelle J. Raymond and I met on a comment back in 3 years ago, and she's in Australia. So there you go. It works.
Exactly. And so when you realize your content is a conversation to build relationships, I think people feel safe behind the screen, and they hide behind the screen, and they do and say things they would not say in person. And this is something I tell everyone that, if you will not say it to someone in person, then don't say it online.
That should be the golden rule of all social media. Like the rule that you cannot use our platform unless you follow this rule. Gosh, the online world would be a lot better place. But luckily, places like LinkedIn, they're a little bit nicer than some of those. But you're right. Say it like we're talking. And I think the biggest takeaway is just talking to one person. They always say, like in copywriting, write to one person, same as online writing. And you're having a conversation, but you need to have a really structured goal, because what are your thoughts about people who just say, oh, just get on LinkedIn, you'll figure it out?
No, because if you do that, you're just going to build this mishmash. I got advice back in the day to connect with everyone that sends you a connection request. No. Build your community deliberately so that you know you're talking to the right people. That way your conversation you're sharing is going to resonate with them because you've put the right people in your network. I call it a community. Once again, we're humanizing the words. But also another thing with getting the content that works and convert is don't forget to invite people into the conversation.
How are you doing that?
The CTA usually invites them in. I'm asking opinions. I'm curious. I ask questions. I don't just hammer it out to people and this is me. I'm an island. I don't want any outside thought. I am inviting outside thought. I am asking questions. And then when people drop comments, I drop comments and questions to try to continue the conversation, because it's about relationship building. A little bit like wining and dining on a date. You wouldn't go to sit down at the table across from a brand new date that you just met. You would not ask them. Most people are not going to sit there and talk just about themselves. You want to get to know the other person. So that's the same thing you're doing with your content. Is you're trying to get to know people so that you can build a relationship that turns into a paying client.
So keep that conversation going. So tell us, as we're winding down, let's give the tactical side of things. We just talked strategy and story, but going back to your story, because you're guiding people a few steps ahead of you who are maybe struggling with putting content out there that's just not resonating and getting results. How do they turn the corner and know the conversation, but how do we turn the corner to get closer to that conversation that's getting them a collaboration or a client or whatever that is they want?
For starters, go back and make sure you know who you're talking to. And knowing your ideal client, who it is you're talking to, is the starting point. And then if you're sure they're in your audience, you know for a fact they're there, that you're actually talking to the right people, you have the right people in your community, ask them what they want from you. Ask them what they want to hear from you. The best way you can do anything to create content that's going to work is literally to ask people. If you need to, run market research calls, get people on a call, talk to them, see what they're saying, and put out a question that asks them, what do they need help with? See what they're asking they need help with. When you do that, your content is guaranteed to resonate because you're creating content that they asked for, that they wanted.
I love that. Yeah, get it. And then you also go into groups or have your own group. You have that Facebook group, I believe I'm a part of on Facebook. I don't get on Facebook much, but I know you have that. So I'm sure you're able to source you create a like-minded group on a certain audience or promise or problem. And so are you gleaning a lot of information from that group? Or are they just making it known what they need? Does that help you clue you in?
To be perfectly honest, at last year, yes. This year, Facebook groups are a lot quieter than they used to be.
Really?
So,
interesting.
Yeah, way quieter than they used to be. So a little bit harder on there, but I'm actually doing it through my community on LinkedIn. I've deliberately built my community. I build it slow. A couple of times I've done big purges to make sure I have the right people in my audience, and I make sure that I'm connecting with the right people that I want. And so I'll put out a question or thought that you think's going on for people, let them and see what the responses are. And then for the people that respond, if you want to know more, get in DM and ask them more.
I always say the voice of customer, the voice of client, whatever, as they say in the copywriting world, get to know them. And you really can't get to know them unless you have a conversation. So that's the whole point. And then that helps you with your offers. I know you've been pretty transparent about some offers falling flat and some not, but that's how you tighten things up, and then you live and learn, right? And so you keep refining all that you're doing. So I absolutely love this. As we wrap out today, every personal brand therapy session has some actionable takeaway so that we can encourage people to put themselves out there, start those conversations. Heidi, what is your one action takeaway we can implement to help us start conversations?
Open with a question. And then at the end, invite people in to actually answer that question in the comments. Let them know it's okay. Let them know that you actually want their thoughts and opinions on it. And in that particular type of content, keep the pitches out of it, make it a true conversation, and then get into the comments with them and continue that conversation as long as they're willing to talk to you, ask questions, ask them more what they're thinking and feeling when they answer you, that kind of stuff. And if need be, move it into DM and find out more if it needs to go a little deeper. That's the big thing, is a lot of good content for me that actually gets the conversation really going is I start with a question.
So do you mean not a CTA like I do? What are your thoughts? You mean the top of the post? Give me examples.
What do you think about commenting on social media posts? Do you do it?
So you're saying just put the first sentence, make that a question, because people will see that. They're not going to see the question buried in the bottom. That's really good market research. And I think people, I'm hunching that, give me a hunch that maybe people respond to that versus some people have proposed to polls. Now, polls on LinkedIn have really died down over 2 years ago. They're obnoxious. Now I really see pretty decent ones. So I don't mind sometimes answering, but you're right. So to get to the heart of content that really is going to have a conversation, you got to know what people want to hear and what people are interested in so that you can write about it and have a chat. I like that a lot. So I am going to say my actual takeaway is something I already just said, but if you're just tuning in or maybe missed that, talk to yourself. Now, do I mean talk to yourself? No. Here's what I do. So every morning, for the most part, I'll go on walks and I get the most brilliant ideas or content or something, because usually it's before I sometimes post. I usually sometimes post on the cuff, even though I have tons of content. And I'll just pull up otter.ai and just riff. And it sounds just like me. And it saves time. Oh my goodness, it saves time. So you can just take that, put it in authored up, which I love and use. So shout out to that. And then you've got it. And then you can, maybe if you're on a roll, your brain's fired up, you could do a couple posts. Once you start something, it's so much easier. So that's my actual takeaway. And the overall theme today is just start conversations to the one person. Realize your voice matters. Your online voice is you. And you can change lives and change your own life and really help people by just getting the mix, being you, and just talk. And for the most of us, that's not too bad. That's not scary when we frame it that way.
You're just talking to people. It's that simple.
Like we're doing now. Exactly. But in a digital format. Heidi, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights and your expertise about content and conversations and your stories. Shout out to you. So if people want to learn more about you, tell us where they can find you.
Heidi Medina.
So I want to thank you, Heidi. And listen, for you listening, watching on the replay, on the podcast, I want your question. If you have a question that you would like to ask me, ask the brand therapist, I'm going to put a link in the show notes and the comments, and you can submit it. And I'm going to answer your question, give you a shout out, all the things in the podcast. If you're an expert guest that can solve a personal branding question that so many of us have, I would love to hear from you, share your story and your expertise. Again, let's get your stories and your expertise out, because at the end of the day, as I always say, keep putting yourself out there. So with that being said, Heidi, thank you again. Thank you all for listening, and I will catch you all next week.
That's a wrap for today's brand therapy session. Are you ready to get visible and build your personal brand? Then head on over to thebrandtherapist.io and grab my free resources to get unstuck and get going today. And until next time, thanks for listening.